This video is the introduction to the Creating Area Graphs using Charticulator playlist of videos. I will give you an overview of what an area graph is and when we would use this type of visual, the steps we go through to create this visual and use it in PowerPoint, and what you will learn in the other videos in this playlist. Let's start by talking about when you would use an area graph. Area graphs are particularly useful when the values you want to compare are very different by an order of magnitude or greater, because in those situations, a column or bar graph is going to leave the smaller values virtually invisible because they are so small compared to the much larger values. So there are two relationships that you may run into when you need to use area graphs. The first is that you're comparing values to each other. In this case, the arrangement I suggest is side by side because the values are not subsets of each other. They're simply being compared to each other. The second type of relationship is when the value is a subset of the previous value. In this case, an overlapping arrangement is usually better because it indicates how much smaller one value is compared to the previous value. Area graphs are not a type of graph that we can create in Excel or PowerPoint on its own, because they're not a built-in graph type. So we can't use the typical tools that we've always used to create graphs. What we can do is we can use a tool from Microsoft Research called Charticulator. This is a web tool and it can be used to create area graphs. This is what Charticulator looks like, and it is a website. It's a web tool that is free to use. Since it is a Microsoft Research project, there is a small chance that it may go away at some point in time, but it is open source and some fixes are made occasionally. While it can be used to create very sophisticated graphs that you'll see on their website, we will be using it relatively simply to create area graphs. To give you an idea of what an area graph can be used for, let's look at an example that I created using Charticulator. This shows the results from a marketing campaign. In that campaign, we received 19,684 total responses. Of those, 8,342 were new contacts, people we had never contacted before. So we did some research and identified 4,151 qualified leads to follow up with. And from those, we got 444 qualified opportunities to actually present a proposal to someone. The area of each of these rectangles is an exact, accurate representation of the value. Now, there are three steps to create this sort of visual and use it in PowerPoint. Step one is to create the data file, comma-separated value, that's what CSV stands for, from the Excel template that I'm going to give you. So in the Excel template, we enter the labels and the data. We decide whether we want to use rectangles or circles. And if we're using rectangles, we decide on the width to height ratio of those rectangles. And then we can save the CSV data file. That's the data file we're going to use in step two, where we use Charticulator. We take that data file and we import it into the web tool. Now notice though, Charticulator only stores the data locally on your own computer. It does not upload it to its own servers. So that's a real advantage from a privacy perspective. We import the CSV data file to the tool. We add a glyph. You'll see what that is in the videos later. And then we can assign the width and height. So now we tell Charticulator how big each of those shapes should be. We set the colors and the arrangement of those shapes. We add any text that we want to, and then we export a scalable vector graphic SVG image that we're going to use in PowerPoint. So step three is to actually insert that SVG image into PowerPoint and break it apart so we can format it. So we insert the SVG image like we would any other image. We ungroup it because it comes in as an image, but PowerPoint knows as an SVG image, it's actually made up of individual objects. So we ungroup it into a drawing object, and then we can ungroup it further into the individual shapes and text boxes that we need. Now we can format those shapes with the colors from our organization's template and the text that we want. And finally, we can add animation if we want to so that we can build each of those shapes piece by piece, step by step, so we can tell our story. There are 6 videos in this playlist, and I broke it up into these videos to make it easier to follow along. The first video is the one you're watching right now, which is the introduction video that gives you context for area graphs and the steps we're going to go through. The next video is the Excel calculation workbook and how you use it to create the data file, the CSV data file you will need to use in Charticulator. Then I have 3 videos in Charticulator. First, how we create side-by-side squares where we're comparing values to each other. Second, how we can create an overlapping rectangles area graph where the values are subsets of previous values. And then third, where we create an overlapping circles area graph, where again, the relationship is a subset of a previous value. Each of those, the endpoint will be to export that SVG image. And the final video is how we use that SVG image in PowerPoint to create our area graph on a slide and format it the way that we want to. So now that you understand an overview of how to create and use an area graph, start with the next video to learn how to calculate the CSV data file from the Excel template.
If you found this video helpful, there are 3 things you can do to help me out. First, click the like button below the video on YouTube. Second, leave a comment with any questions or feedback. And third, subscribe to my channel. Check out my websites and other videos with more tips and advice. Thanks again for watching.